Hi folks, it's Sarah here, and you better get ready because we're just about half a year away from Halloween. And so I have picked a stack of atmospheric books filled with enchantment that I thought would be both perfect to celebrate the 6-month mark to Halloween, but also felt rather spring-like because spring can be spooky too, right? These are all published by independent publishers because that's what I like to focus on here. I have read one of these books. I'm in the process of reading a few more of them, and the others are just waiting for me. So let's dive right in. The first one up is WILLOWES by Sylvia Townsend Warner. This is the one book in the stack that I have read completely. This is a classic written in 1926, originally, I believe. This edition is published by New York Review of Books in their classics line. I'll talk a little bit more about it at a future date because I have a huge stack of New York Review of Books. They had a sale. That'll be the topic of a future video. So this is about Laura Willows, who lives in London, and she one day decides to escape her familiar and familial obligations of her London life and head off to the British countryside and live her life alone there. And along the way, she becomes a witch and sells her soul to the devil. So perfect for halfway to Halloween, but it's filled also with all sorts of walks through the countryside and communing with nature and the plants and the animal life of her surrounding. I love this book. It's a classic, so I highly recommend reading it this time of year or any other. Doop, doop, doop. Also by Sylvia Townsend Warner is Kingdoms of Elfin. So while WILLOWES, I believe, was her first published book in 1926, a novel, this was her final book published, I think, in 1977, and it's actually a book of short stories that are all about the various kingdoms of fairies that live throughout Europe. I'm almost done with it. I'm more than halfway through. It is delightful. It is absolutely wonderful. This edition is published by Handheld Press, which is a UK publisher that publishes a lot of lost and forgotten works of literature, and it is actually it's blurbed by Neil Gaiman, so I'm just going to read it here. Let's see. It's a glorious sequence of stories in which the courts of Elfin existed through history in our world, with their own customs and manners, attendants and events. History and comedy, romance and tragedy interlace. A book for anyone who has heard the horns of Elfin in the distance at twilight, as much as it is for readers who crave fine literature and are certain that elves and their kingdoms are fairy tale bosh. But I just love that. A book for anyone who has heard the horns of Elfin in the distance at twilight. So this is actually also really great for spring. It just takes place in the English and French countryside. It's quite beautiful. Also from Handheld Press is Women's Weird: Strange Stories by Women, 1890 to 1940, edited by Melissa Edmundson. This is obviously a collection of short stories. I'm going to read the back here. Early weird fiction embraces the supernatural, horror, science fiction, fantasy, and the Gothic, and was explored with enthusiasm by many women writers in the United Kingdom and in the USA. Melissa Edmundson has brought together a compelling collection of the best weird short stories by women from the late 19th and early 20th centuries to thrill new readers and delight these authors' fans. So there's 13 authors included in here, such as Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who wrote The Yellow Wallpaper, Edith Nesbit, Edith Wharton, and D.K. Broster. The first line of the first story On a summer's day in the year 1860, I, Humphrey Walford, did a deed for which I should have been disinherited by my father and disowned by my ancestors. I laid sacrilegious hands on the old carved oak four-post family bedstead and destroyed it. So, women's weird. Then we have Lanny by Max Porter. This is published by Graywolf Press. I have to admit, the cover makes me think of spooky spring just on its own. I've been wanting to read this for a while. It was published in 2019. And I'll just read the blurb, which sounds perfect for halfway to Halloween, springtime spookiness. There's a village an hour from London. It's no different from many others. One pub, one church, red brick cottages, some public housing. This village belongs to the people who live in it, to the land, and to the land's ancient past. It also belongs to dead Papa Toothwort, a mythical figure that school children used to draw with leafy tendrils growing out of his mouth, who awakens after a glorious nap. He's listening to this 21st century village, to its symphony of talk, drunken confessions, gossip traded on the street corner, fretful dinner table conversations. He is listening intently for a mischievous, ethereal boy whose parents have recently made the village their home, Lanny. This chimerical, audacious, and bewitching novel is a ringing defense of creativity, spirit, and the generative forces that often seem under assault today. So, also from Graywolf Press is Fen, short stories by Daisy Johnson. I think this was published in like 2016. Yes, 2016. And it says, amid the paths of the fens, a teenager might starve herself into the shape of an eel. A house might fall in love with a girl. A boy might return from the dead in the guise of a fox. In Daisy Johnson's startling, restless stories, the line between human and animal grows ever thinner as the confines of small-town life give way to the unpredictable wild. So that sounded perfect for springy, spooky time to me. Daisy Johnson has also written a novel called Sisters, which I would very, very much recommend for this time of year. It's got spooky, seaside, summertime vibes, and I loved that novel. It's a great one, so recommend that, and therefore very much looking forward to her short story collection. And finally, in my stack here for our halfway to Halloween celebration, I have a book of short stories called A Perfect Cemetery by Federico Falco. It's translated, I believe, from the Spanish by Jennifer Croft, and this was published by Charco Press. This is another UK publisher, and it's dedicated to publishing works of contemporary literature from Latin America into English. So I believe this is Federico Falco's first first book to be published in English. And I have to admit that it was the title that made me pick it for halfway to Halloween, A Perfect Cemetery, which is the title of one of the stories included in this collection. And that story is about a town's mayor who tries to fulfill his father's dying wish to design the perfect cemetery. But there's also some of the other stories are about a widow watching through a window in the middle of a blizzard and watches the ruin of her late husband's garden until suddenly she sees a woman running naked in the fallen snow. After telling her parents she's abandoning her Christian faith, a girl becomes infatuated with a Mormon missionary who reminds her of a boy killed in her village years before. When his family's home is lost, a father desperately offers his daughter's hand in marriage to anyone who will take them in. The mountains of Argentina pulse with life in these disarming stories of people radically reinventing themselves in order to find love and connection, to escape their past, and to seek a way out of the banalities of sorrow and loss in the present. So that sounded really particularly wonderful. What do you think? Okay. So there you have it. 6 spooky springtime. Wait, no. What do I want to say about these books? So there you have it. 6 books to help you celebrate only 6 more months to Halloween. Actually, now that I think about it, I still have these other books from my last video that are kind of also perfect for celebrating halfway to Halloween. An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good And the second volume, An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed. You know, Halloween, we got skulls, cross-stitch skulls. I mean, you can't beat that. These are by Helene, Tursten, originally written in Swedish, translated by Marlaine, Delargy, and these are published by Soho Press through their Soho Crime imprint. And I'm about halfway through the first one. These are so tiny and cute. I just love these so much. So yeah, we can add those to our stack for our halfway to Halloween. We're getting ready. We're gonna make it. We're gonna be able to last until Halloween, I promise. You and me together. We can do it. We will make it. And after I picked this stack of books for this video, I realized that a lot of them are very earthy and wild. And as you read them, you kind of question our cultural assumptions that humans are somehow separate from or different than the other living creatures, animal and plant life that surround us, which of course we aren't separate from or different than any other living being. We are nature. We're not separate from nature. And I think that's a perfect message to think about in the spring and as you're getting ready for the next 6 months for Halloween. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. If you want to explore more books published by independent publishers and university presses with me, hit subscribe or just come back and visit sometime. I don't even know what I will be doing. Yeah, I'll be making videos about independent publishers. I got a lot planned. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I will be back soon with a new video about a big stack of books. In the meantime, turn off my face and go read a book.